Hello, my name is Jeremy Apgar and I'm the cartographer here at the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference. I've been making maps here for nearly 14 years, producing published trail maps, maps for trail building and land conservation efforts, and many other kinds of maps for our organization. Today I'd like to talk about trail map design and highlight some of the ways that MAPublisher and Avenza Maps have played a huge role in our ability to create and distribute maps. So let's get into trail map design. First, I'd like to provide some background about our organization and our long trail map history. Next, I'll discuss some of the important design considerations for trail maps and how we use MAPublisher to produce the maps. And then we'll finish up with a quick look at how we've been able to get more than 250,000 trail maps out to trail users using the Avenza Maps app. So the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference is a volunteer-powered nonprofit organization caring for public lands and trails. Our passion is helping people responsibly enjoy the benefits of being outdoors, and we were founded in 1920, so we are officially 100 years old. For decades, trail users have relied on our trail maps to help them navigate on and off the trails. Our trail map story really starts more than 80 years ago. From the mid-1930s to 1970, a fellow named Bill Hefferlin was the primary map maker for the hiking community in the New York Metropolitan area, and he was also involved with the Trail Conference in numerous ways. Bill produced 11 by 17 black and white prints that sold for 10 to 25 cents, and they were remarkably detailed for the time. This is an example of a 1936 map of the Catskills here in New York, here revised in 1939. The Trail Conference took up the baton of quality trail mapping after Bill's death in 1970. By the 1980s, our map design took on a simplistic, trail-focused map style, as represented by this section of our 1985 Catskills map. These maps showed trails as red solid lines and included USGS-derived elevation contours. And by 2000, with the help of Avenza MAPublisher, we began producing our maps entirely digitally, which has led us to our current map style. This is one of our more recent maps, our 2018 Catskill map, which is representative of most of our published trail maps. The maps are basically 5 colors with a simple topographic background of 50 or 20-foot contour lines. They include trail mileage numbers and points of interest, and maps are printed on thick Tyvek that is waterproof and tear-resistant, and we've been printing on this for more than 40 years. Today, our maps are available in print format on this Tyvek material, as well as digitally on mobile devices through the Avenza Maps app. So here are some neat map statistics that sum up our trail map history. During my time as cartographer, I've overseen more than 40 map printings. It's important to recognize also that we have a dedicated and skilled team of publications volunteers who have always been a crucial component of our trail mapping efforts. Without these awesome volunteers, including field checkers, project managers, and editors, our trail maps today would not have been possible. So moving into trail map design, it's important to evaluate all design components with the key qualities of ease of use, accuracy, and attractiveness. Some of these qualities apply to maps in general, but trail map creation requires some special considerations. First, user safety is a top concern. A trail map should be easy to understand by as many users as possible, especially users who may need the most help navigating the trails. Another key quality of a trail map is ensuring it is accurate, especially regarding trail routes and other components related to accessing and using the trails. And finally, trail maps should be visually attractive, to both draw in a potential user's attention and also keep their attention during use. Now, good can be subjective, but certain design choices can impact the quality of a trail map and the ability to properly address the items from the previous slide. Some of these best practices may not apply in all circumstances, especially with location or cultural differences, but I've tried to be as inclusive of different map purposes and audiences as possible. And these design choices are most geared toward cartographers who do not have much trail mapping experience. For those of you with a lot of experience and finely tuned workflows, I'm not aiming to change minds or claim you're doing it wrong if you use a different design choice. And an important lesson that I've learned is that you must be open to constructive criticism. It is natural to defend your work, but criticism can either help you develop strong reasoning for your choices or help you recognize your design choice may not have been the best choice. If you don't agree with something in this presentation, please let me know. Please reach out and let me know. Now, before getting into design, it's important to answer the question, who will the map serve? This can be a complicated question to answer, especially for trail maps, as there can be many different levels of users. Beyond the primary user group, consider the full spectrum of potential end users, and which groups may make up the largest percentage of use. It is also useful to recognize any major constraints, including the amount of time available, the software available to produce the map from start to finish, and the breakdown of available data versus data that may need to be collected. So let's talk a little about trail map design. This here is a map I made of a place called Blue Lake Park. What do y'all think? If I could see it right now, I'm sure I'd see some questionable looks and perhaps get some laughs. But I created this trail map to intentionally have as many poor design choices as possible. Maps often have a mix of good and bad design elements, although I would guess that fellow map makers here would skew more toward the good end. If you've never tried it, intentionally making a fictional bad map is a great exercise. But I wanted to show this map because I often do see trail maps that have some or several of these design elements. With a trained eye, you can often easily spot trail maps that have come straight out of a typical GIS software package. And while there have been many advances in design options for these kinds of software, I've found they really don't reach the level of map design possible with the combination of Avenza's MAPublisher and Adobe Illustrator. Here's a revised version of this map that takes care of some issues with the previous map, but from the trail perspective, the design choices are still not optimal for users. And lastly, here is a version of this map that I created using MAPublisher that is generally representative of our usual map style. As I mentioned previously, we started using MAPublisher more than 20 years ago. When a new large park was preserved around the year 2000, one of our longtime volunteers, Herb Chong, wanted to explore digital map creation. He found that the regular GIS map outputs severely lacking from the design perspective. And with MAPublisher, he discovered a solution that allowed our digitally produced maps to have a similar design to our existing maps. Since then, we've refined our style sheet, and the features of MAPublisher have been a crucial part of these efforts for the past 20+ years. For most maps today, our workflow involves initial data organization within ArcGIS, followed by map creation in Illustrator with MAPublisher. So with this map here, you can see some of the trail map design choices we've focused on, and I'll go through a few of the primary choices now. So realism describes a style of map that uses a combination of shaded relief, land cover classes, and potentially 3D oblique viewing angles to present a more realistic looking landscape. When done carefully, this style can be very attractive and useful, but it can be very time intensive to do correctly. I've seen some great examples of trail maps that use this style, including by some other presenters and attendees here, so this is certainly not a knock on that style when done really well. For use out on the trail, some users find this style to be more helpful, while some find it to be less helpful. If not designed properly, especially when shaded relief and contours are combined poorly, novice users can be negatively impacted by a busy background, and experienced users can also be negatively impacted by being unable to easily refer to contour lines. On the other hand, a simple topographic design uses only faint contours to show the terrain and generally has a cleaner map background. This style can be very attractive as well, in part due to its simplicity. For use out on the trails, the simple design is often easier for more users to read and understand. It seems to be a common misconception that contour lines are for experienced users, while shaded relief is better for novice users. In my experience, both can be equally difficult to interpret for many novice users, so our approach is to allow the elevation information to be visible enough to benefit those who can interpret it, but not too prominent as to confuse those who cannot interpret it. Visual hierarchy refers to the way map elements are designed to be most effective for their intended use. For trail maps, the trail should be the first thing a user notices. If a trail map's background or other elements overpower the trail lines, then the map can be more difficult to use. A user's eyes should be drawn first to the trail network, followed by other elements. Prominent visual hierarchy can be established with high contrast colors, thick line widths, solid line styles, and special symbols. In this map example, the trail network of thick red lines pops out of the map. A common line style for trail lines is using a dashed line, but this often pushes the trails down in the visual hierarchy. The more complex a color palette, the more likely it is that certain colors will clash, or certain colors may be too similar to other colors. The example map has a complex color palette of more than 30 different color shades. There is also no clear association of color with any specific type of information, and while there are some light colors, the map has an overall dark tone. This simpler design map has a very limited color palette of only 7 different colors. There's a clear association of color with specific types of information, where red is trail-related, blue is water-related, and brown is topography-related. And the map has an inviting, bright tone. In our region, most of our parks have trail systems where trails are marked by different colored blazes. For our maps, we've found that using a single color for trails, regardless of their on-the-ground blaze color, can have many advantages. Trail Conference maps use red for the color of trail lines fairly consistently, with blaze colors indicated on the trails with symbols. Using the color of the blaze color for the trail line is a common design choice. For some users, this style may be preferred, but for even more users, this style can negatively impact ease of use. It is often suggested that this style is easier for novice users, but this is likely only true for a small percentage of novice users, and ignores some of the reasons why this trail line style can be less helpful. On the next slide, I'll go over a couple specific negative impacts of this line style choice. So the primary reason why we suggest not using the blaze color for the line color is because of vision issues. Up to 8% of men, primarily of North European descent, may have some form of color blindness. The map here is a simulated example of how the map may look to someone with red-green color blindness. In addition, over 90% of people over the age of 65 have a cataract, which can produce faded or washed out colors. A consistent trail line color and consistent blaze color symbol provide easy reference for all users. For a map using the blaze color for the line color, vision issues can make the map very difficult or even impossible to use. For maps with no additional blaze color information aside from the color of the line, the map is entirely unusable by these users. I've touched on this on some of the last slides, but it's best to include blaze color information directly on the trails, in a way that can be easily identified by users under various conditions. We have used these oval symbols as our primary blaze color symbols from the very beginning. For maps like this example that don't write the blaze color anywhere on the map, it can be difficult to use based on the reasons just mentioned. Some maps may write out the color of the trail in the legend, and while this is better than not including the blaze color text at all, minimizing the need for a user to move back and forth between the map and the legend is certainly best. Beyond these broader style choices, there are many smaller details that are important to consider. A map user is putting their trust in a map to help guide them. Every flaw or mistake they notice decreases their trust in a map, and with enough flaws, they might lose confidence in a map entirely. Some detail-oriented things to think about are how to show co-aligned trails, ensuring roads are clear and double-checked for accuracy, simplifying overly detailed features for the map scale, including points of interest that would be useful for users, using style templates and carefully placing symbols and labels, double-checking spelling, and certainly having a regular update strategy. And yes, I did intentionally misspell spelling there. Spelling errors are perhaps the quickest way for someone to lose trust in a map, so get at least a second pair of eyes on your maps to check for spelling. So I wanted to focus this session on the design aspects of trail maps, but it's important to remember that a great trail map is only serving its purpose if it can be seen and used by the people using the trails. Back in 2011, when we learned about the new PDF Maps app, we thought it was a perfect opportunity to go beyond our printed-on-Tyvek maps and provide a digital solution that so many of our users had been asking for. While there were various options, most involved placing trail lines on existing base maps from other providers, but Avenza's offering allowed our own maps to serve as the base map. After getting all our ducks in a row, we became a map vendor in the spring of 2012. And since then, we've seen usage of these app maps increase, even in the face of strong competition from other options. Through the years, we've used a variety of methods for promoting the app maps. On our website in combination with print maps, at trailheads using QR code signage, along the trail with business card handouts, using a strategy of both free and for sale maps, through our members by encouraging them to be vocal map advocates and recommending Avenza Maps to friends and within social media hiking or trail groups, through our park partners by providing them with signage and information they can use to recommend to park visitors, and as regular features in our email and print newsletters to highlight the latest app features and newest map updates. With the onset of the pandemic 1 year ago, once initially closed parks reopened, we saw our Avenza Maps scales skyrocket. As many people sought out nature therapy, they discovered our maps in record numbers, as our sales more than doubled last year compared to the previous year. And so far this year, we've seen similar trends, even during a traditionally slow time of year. And while our primary user group is the public out on the trails, we also use the features of Avenza Maps to accomplish much of our own organization's work. From invasive species surveying to trail relocation scouting to detailed trail conditions reporting, our staff and volunteers have found many ways to use these enhanced app maps as part of their everyday work. We've also been able to produce maps that are only available in digital format. One of our most popular maps in print form is our Catskills map set, which includes 6 separate maps. For use on Avenza Maps, where we don't have printing limitations, we produced a single map that combined those 6 section maps and even included an expanded coverage area. And to bring this session full circle with our long map history, we've been lucky enough to continue to see very strong sales of our print maps, with record sales on our website all through the past year. So we're glad to see so many people recognize the value of having a print map as part of proper preparation out on the trail. But as more and more people look to other resources for their trail information, being able to provide options like app maps through Avenza Maps will continue to be important as we seek to reach as many people out on the trails as possible. So thanks to Avenza for being at the forefront of outstanding map making and distribution resources. If you'd like to learn more about how we make our maps, or additional trail map design considerations, you can find some of my recorded webinars in the Trail Conference's online learning library at the website shown here, or feel free to reach out to me through my email anytime. Thank you for joining me here today, and I hope you learned something new about trail maps.